That version of the film was just for you, that will never be seen again anywhere else at any other time.
This is documentary filmmaker Gary Hustwit. If you didn't catch that, he just said that his new film about Brian Eno, the one we all just watched, will never be seen again. It's not an error with the file or a mix-up in the screening. This is the intended result. That's because this film is being billed as a generative documentary, a movie that with the help of generative software can rewrite itself before every screening.
Like, we're so locked into this concept of film and television always has to be the same. It's linear, it's static, it never changes. That's a technical constraint that's from 130 years ago. We don't have those constraints with digital technology anymore, so why are we still sticking with them?
When you create something, you're doing this thing that humans are very good at, which is imagining.
For the uninitiated, Brian Eno is a bit of a legend. Not just for the music he's created, he's produced acts like U2 and David Bowie, but for his philosophy, his ideas about creativity, and how art can be made, particularly with the help of generative technology. In 2017, Click visited his studio to see him create some of his generative art up close.
This essentially never repeats in billions of years. It's constantly generating new images. Sometimes it does things that are so bafflingly fantastic, you think, gosh, I never would have thought of that.
A lot of the ways that Brian creates music and art are also reflected in the way we created the film, because we're not making a normal documentary where we craft each scene and, time it out. We're creating kind of a structure in software that will create our film.
You can think of it like this. Up here we have a pool of pre-cut scenes, hundreds of hours of never-before-seen archival footage, and exclusive interviews with Eno. Down here we have an empty structure looking for pieces to fill up the slots. Some parts of the film are always the same. Pieces here are pinned in place. But for the rest, the software makes selections, slots them into place based on instructions from the filmmakers, and edits together a new film that it will never generate again.
It can make approximately 52 quintillion versions of the film, which is 52 with 19 zeros after it.
Brendan Dawes is a generative artist himself and the developer of the film's bespoke generative software.
The way to think of it is kind of like a collaborator. I give it some direction, but then it like, oh, actually I've done this, and I go, wow, okay, let's go down that path and that route. I'm specifically looking to be surprised and delighted.
I'm pleased if people are more confused than they were before, because I think the biggest problem is trying to deal with what I call the appetite for certainty.
I think we normally want to have control as filmmakers of every second. So there's a little bit of surrendering that control, but the result is things that I never would have thought to connect myself. When I see it, when our generative system does it, just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that connection.
That could be making unusual story choices like jumping around out of chronological order, or juxtaposing two seemingly unrelated scenes. Those choices can lead to wildly different versions of what is supposedly the same film. For example, Gary says the audience reaction to the project, which premiered at this year's Sundance Film Festival, was different every night. The mood shifted based on the choices the algorithm made.
Like the first time the film screened here at Sundance, I felt it was like very energetic and there was lots of laughs. But then the second time, it was more introspective and more personal. It just depends on the scenes that end up getting chosen that night.
And you can see those choices happening as you're watching the film. There's text that displays on screen showing the algorithm at work. These sorts of moments can make it easy to chalk this whole thing up to technology, a magic algorithm that somehow creates cinema out of thin air. But the algorithm only succeeds in creating moments of serendipity because of the work of human filmmakers who have worked filming, editing, and mixing material before feeding it into the software.
It's not just about the tech. It is about the filmmaking craft, and we're using it as a tool to kind of extend what we could do. The system is trained by our intelligence as filmmakers, not some artificial intelligence.
A film like this gives us an opportunity to think about what cinema actually is and where new technology fits into the process of how we make movies. For me, I enjoyed the version of the film I saw. It had all the hallmarks of a good music documentary, although the story did seem to meander a bit from time to time. But for the man the film is about, he's happy with that ambiguity. Eno spoke to the audience at Sundance from his home in the UK over the theater's speakers.
I didn't really want to do an ordinary documentary because I always find them frustrating. I like the idea of a film that worked the same way that my music, which is to say with a fairly high degree of randomness in it.
Hustwit and his crew seem to be betting on this idea. In March, he and Brendan launched Animorph, a generative film company that will aim to create more films like this one.
It's an idea, and there are other people who are going to have other ideas about how to use this tool that we've created. So we're super excited to kind of keep collaborating and keep doing new projects and see what the possibilities are.